Good evening, everybody. Hope you're well. Thank you for joining us this evening. I am really happy to welcome Karen, Amy, Emma, and Sakina shortly to this webinar. I am as usual, going to be in the background, monitoring the chat, making sure that everybody can hear us and see us okay. So if you could just put a yes in the chat, that would be really useful. We will have questions at the end of the webinar. So if you do have any questions, just put them in the Q&A box and we will work through those either during or after the presentation. But I'm here if you need me. I'm going to hand you over to Emma. Have a good evening.
Cheers, Sharon. Thanks very much. Can you hear me okay? Hopefully.
Yep, we can
Yep.
hear you fine. Yep.
Brilliant. Thanks very much. Yeah, welcome everybody. Good evening. Thank you for being here. We was just saying we appreciate it's Easter holidays for a lot of people as well. So welcome to our session tonight. I'm pleased that we've got joining us Amy, who's our student rep, and Karen and Sakina, who work with me on the coaching and mentoring program. So this is the second part of our webinar based on the Preparing for Practice series. And today that we're going to start looking at some employment versus self-employment, some tax information, and any other sort of key considerations in that area for hygienists and therapists. If you have any questions, as Sharon's just said, please go over them. We will have the opportunity of questions throughout, and we'll try and get through as many as we can at the end. Okay, so this is based on the BSDHT Preparation for Practice Toolkit, which can be found in the members section for members. I appreciate that this webinar is open to non-members as well, so that's something that you can only access if you are a member. But yes, so it's got lots of information with checklists and tips and recommendations, and this is what this presentation is based upon. And as I've said, the purpose of this presentation is to look at some considerations for employment versus self-employment. And I really just need to stress we are not experts. We are just generally sharing our information, knowledge and wisdom and signposting, and just to get you thinking of where in your time as a graduate or newly qualified, where you need to be focusing your time and energy in getting the most from your employment or self-employment. So we're going to discuss financial and practical considerations, things about what we could include in a contract, tax, IR35, what that means, and other financial considerations. I apologise if I'm talking really quickly. We've just got loads to get through tonight, so I'm really keen to get it in. So yeah, if you want me to stop or repeat anything, just pop a question and let me know. So I want to start with this presentation by saying start now, start preparing now for the day that you leave. Ask yourself, what is it that you want to achieve? What are your financial goals? What are your personal goals? What are your professional goals? If you've got some sort of inkling of what that is, you can really start planning now. A prime example of that is something like pensions. It's not something that you think of when you're young or newly qualified necessarily, but those years fly by, and before you know it, you'll wish that it is something you had looked into. Again, things like mortgages, taking career breaks and things like that. So start to get some sort of plan, even if it's just in your mind at the moment, but that will really help you to plan, financially and practically moving forward. So looking at employment versus self-employment. So employment is working under an employment contract with a practice or organisation, and self-employment is working as an independent professional, providing service to multiple practices or running your own business. And we'll get down to the nitty-gritty a bit more of the differences between those now. So some of the benefits of employment is the financial security it can bring. Normally, you would get a regular salary with this. You'd be entitled to sick pay or sometimes statutory sick pay, holiday pay, so paid leave, and pension contributions. Depending on the size of your employer, most have to make a pension contribution, and you would make a self-contribution of that as well. And I've just popped in their maternity leave, which I do touch on in a bit more detail, but I think it's just worth mentioning that it's just a consideration that you have. There's less admin burden, so you don't need to do your own taxes or self-assessment or anything. You don't need your own insurance, although you still need your own indemnity, but normally you would come under the workplace insurance, and patient bookings and everything are dealt with and done for you. Professional development, you may have mentorship programs within an employment organization. Things like training and career progression opportunities may exist as well. Normally, you've got set hours, so you've got stability of work and team support. So, working within a practice, peer support and collaboration. Hopefully, you should have that as self-employed as well. And it's not to say that all employment has that. Some of the drawbacks then, so less earning potential. So generally your salary would be lower compared to self-employment earnings. Again, not always the case, but on the whole, you can potentially earn more as self-employed. Limited control, so less say in work schedule and limited annual leave. Again, we would be working in a dental practice. So how much say do you have in the work schedule when you're employed or self-employed? It's a bit negotiable. Workplace politics, so hierarchies and dynamics may be challenging, particularly if this is within corporate. But again, you could have that with self-employed as well. And your hours may be fixed, so you may have less flexibility in working patterns because you are not able to dictate your working hours. So some of the benefits then of self-employment, if we look at this, as I've already touched on, you have a higher earning potential. So within reason, you've got the ability to set your own fees and take on multiple roles. I think what I would probably do is amend that to agree your own fees. You can give notice of a pay rise and say that your fees are increasing, which you wouldn't be able to do that if you were purely just self-employed. Obviously, the practice has to agree with that. They don't have to, but you do have a bit more flexibility on that. You have a bit more control over your schedule and workload, and more control over business decisions because effectively you are your own business. So if you wanted, different kit and equipment, you could potentially invest in that. And then you've got maybe a bit more variety. So you've got an opportunity to work at multiple practices, or I say even own a business. Now, with the way that dentistry is changing for hygienists and therapists, it is possible, and some people have set up their own practice. Some of the drawbacks then is financial uncertainty. So it's no guaranteed income. So you need to manage your cash flow. If you're on a percentage base and a patient doesn't turn up, then therefore you potentially wouldn't get paid. Also, you have no employee benefits, so you don't get sick pay, holiday pay, or any pension contributions. You would have to set up your own private pension as well. Obviously, you've got the admin responsibilities that come with this. So, doing your taxes, insurance, ensuring that your contract is watertight. That goes for employment as well, but obviously more so when you're self-employed. And marketing, marketing yourself. You need to be self-motivated, so you've got to seek work and manage all these above admin responsibilities as well. So when you're deciding whether it's employment versus self-employment, some things to consider would be the financial side of things. So you need to budget for tax, insurance, and ultimately retirement, really. Start when would you like to retire and work backwards, because we all know that goalpost keeps changing with the government, doesn't it? The official retirement age. So work-life balance, again, do you prefer the stability or flexibility? I know for me, when I first qualified, I was in the military, so I was employed, and I really did like that employed role, which I did for a few years before branching out and doing self-employed. I appreciate that's not always the case for everybody. Um, what is your personality? Do you thrive with structure or independence? Are you quite happy to go in and negotiate things and have potentially some difficult conversations when you are self-employed? What career goals do you have? What are your long-term professional development objectives and opportunities for both employed and self-employed, and seeing what each can offer you? And then you've got the legal and business aspects, so contracts, liability insurance, marketing strategies for self-employment as well. Again, it varies to what degree you may have to do that depending on the type of practice that you work in. And then ultimately, you may not have a choice. A practice may be recruiting for an employed position or a purely self-employed position. That would really just come down to negotiation, but some practices may not give you the option. So I just want to touch on percentage versus hourly rate, because this seems to be a question that crops up an awful lot, but it's not just a simple case of, is this a good percentage? Because there's so many different variables at play. So just doing this calculation as a basis, I've taken this as a standard hygiene appointment that would be £70 per appointment. You work 8 hours a day and the appointments are half an hour. So you've got 16 appointments per day and you're on a 40%. As comparison, I've put an hourly rate at £25 an hour, which some deem to be quite low. So that's why I've put it as that, just so you can see, roughly what the lowest potentially could be there. You've also got your national insurance and tax rates to consider for self-employed, and I've based this on working 5 days a week, 48 weeks of the year, which, to be honest, that is quite a lot. Not many people, I say not many people, I'm just going off, people that I know. Um, but 5 days a week and four weeks holiday a year is it can be quite a lot if you're self-employed, and a lot of people do talk about burnout. So it's being mindful that this is potentially the maximum time that you would work, but obviously there's flexibility with that. So just to show that on a table, how that would look, you can see the differences here. I'm not going to read them out. I mean, feel free just to take a screenshot if you wanted, and have this for a referral to go from. But so after your tax and national insurance, here you can see, if you're on a 40% basis, that is the maximum that you would be on, potentially £75,000 then after tax and national insurance. The lowest that you could potentially on would be at an hourly rate, maybe as an employed position at £25 an hour, could be 37. But again, there's lots and lots of variables with that. It depends on the area, how long you've been qualified. Do you have nurse support? So we will just be going into a few more of those things because there's a lot more to it than just the money. So some key questions to ask them before deciding, what is the charge per treatment type? An example, I've put 30, 45 or 60-minute hygiene appointments purely because I'm a hygienist and it's what I know. But obviously, for your therapy treatment as well, there's a lot more variety in those appointments. What percentage is being offered? Are there any deductions for materials or equipment? How many patients are typically booked in every day and every week? What happens if a patient cancels or fails to attend? Do you get any pay from that? Is there a cancellation fee? Do they pay in advance? Are they on plan? So they've essentially paid upfront already. So these are things to just make sure that you know. And if possible, you could ask, can I just review the appointment book just to see what it looks like? Some may say no because of like GDPR and patient confidentiality. But yeah, it is worth just asking the question. So how are gaps managed in the diary then? So are you paid if patients have failed to attend? It depends what's in place. It depends what that practice policy is and what their payment plan is. So make sure that you have this conversation and this is in your contract before you start, if possible. Can you negotiate a minimum guarantee per session? So as an example of that, it could be if patients are paying on a plan and they don't turn up, really they've paid already. So would you get a minimum amount of that rather than the full amount if they'd failed? Ask the practice, how often do cancellations occur? How are they managed? Do reception follow up with these? And in that time, can you offer some additional services to fill gaps? So, airflow, whitening consultations. Do they have a waiting list, short notice cancellation list, that kind of thing? Having these conversations initially at the interview point can really just help things run smoothly if you start in that workplace. So for employees, well, for employment and self-employment, you really need to understand your contract terms. If you're not happy with something, negotiate where possible. You don't have to just accept it. You can, have a starting point and negotiate. Obviously, if you're employed, it would be the employee contract that you sign. You wouldn't be able to provide your own. But take advantage of any CPD or training opportunities. So, as an example, like life support and medical emergencies training, you potentially would be paid for that. If possible, you could seek mentorship and career progression within the workplace, potentially if you're working within a corporate practice as well, and there's the opportunity, just to develop within that workplace. And again, understand your financial goals. A big thing is like mortgages, for example. So if you are looking at buying a house or getting a mortgage in the near future, potentially employment could be more beneficial just due to the requirements of mortgage providers. It's not to say it's impossible with self-employment, but generally you do require a few more years worth of tax returns. So for self-employment then, practical tips, keep detailed financial records. And if you're super disorganized, even if you're not, it's definitely worth just consulting an accountant, particularly in the early days, just until you understand exactly what it is that you can do. Have a reliable contract that you fully understand. And I cannot stress this enough. A lot of people get caught out with contracts, either notice periods or the expectation that they will provide a locum when they are on annual leave and things like that. So if there's if there's something in the contract that you don't understand and you are not clear on, BSDHT does offer a contract checking service with legal advice. So I would definitely advise, if you're a member, that you take advantage of that. Maintain strong relationships with multiple practices to ensure a steady income. That's been beneficial for me in the past. I know that I've not had great patient attendance at one, so my hours were reduced. I was able to up them at the next practice, a week later, so it didn't really have a big financial impact on me. Same as employed, understand your financial goals. Again, you've got the potential for higher earning as self-employed. How are you going to save? What are you saving towards? Are you going to work quite a lot, 5 days a week potentially for a couple of years and then look to step back and reduce? What are your financial goals? And then obviously market yourself, through networking, social media, and other professional organizations as well. And obviously, you can have a mixture of both. You can be both employed and self-employed. I have done that. It's just more paperwork when it comes to filling it out for the tax thing. But yeah, it's absolutely possible that you can be a mixture of both as well. So I just want to pause there and see if we've got any questions coming up. Are any of the team able to have a look and share any?
Um, Emma, if you're self-employed, does that mean you don't work at your regular practice weekly? I mean,
I'm not too sure what that
yeah,
means.
I think
But
the self-employed issue is means you can work whenever you work.
um, if I, if whoever wrote that, if you're able to clarify, but I suppose my understanding of that would be, can you work at a regular practice every week? And yes, you can, but in the eyes of HMRC, His Majesty's Revenue and Customs, you potentially could be deemed as employed status if it's just one practice with set hours, same place every week, and you don't have multiple. So you can do that, but you would likely be seen as employed rather than self-employed.
Okay, can a practice put into your self-employed contract to find cover whilst on holiday and pay for the cover ourselves?
They can put that in there, and it is one of the features of self-employment. It doesn't mean you have to agree to it, it's optional. So, again, that would just be something to discuss. Um, I mean, some people have friends that they do like swaps with, so they know when they're going to be on holiday and, they've got people that they can go to. Appreciate that's not always the case. But yeah, that would be something to negotiate with your practice. It is, like I say, one of the features of a contract that does lend itself to being self-employed. It doesn't mean you have to agree to it though. So I would say get some legal advice on that before you sign anything.
Okay, Amy, do you want to ask the next one?
Yeah, so we've got on here, are there any specialist dental accountants, or would it be straightforward for any accountant to understand the dental field when it comes to tax returns? Um, so,
I'm going to
so
throw that back over to you guys because I have never had an accountant. I was very lucky that I just had an uncle who was a super whiz with tax and stuff. So he used to do mine, and mine was really quite straightforward. So personally, I've never had an accountant. I don't think you need to have a specialist accountant. It may help, but I don't know what over to you guys, Karen and Amy. What do you do?
Yeah, so I think so. I joined when I started out. I was in a very supportive practice, and I asked the dentist and hygienist there which accountant they were using, because you'll find that some accountants deal more with like other dental clinicians, and I think they probably are the best accountants that already sort of understand our roles as well. So once you get into practice, I would definitely ask your colleagues, and then if you don't have to have an accountant that does deal with other dental clinicians, but I do think it does help when they understand. But you can use any accountant really. I think always they can be quite expensive, so make sure you sort of ask them about the fees and things to start with. Some they can you may have to pay per email they send, a bit like a solicitor, or per phone call, per minute that they
Mm,
work on your case. And some can have set fees for the year. So I remember mine was set for the year. I was with the guy for 10 years, and then he retired. And then the new person that took over was charging me by the minute, and it doubled. So
yeah.
always ask those questions.
Yeah, and I think I would say it deploys it depends if you're a sole trader or limited company as well. If you're
Yeah.
limited company, it can get a little bit more. I would say if I had a limited company, I'd definitely have an accountant. As a sole trader, you potentially don't need one.
Yeah, it's quite complicated then, doesn't it? So I think you'll all be classed as what we call sole traders to start with, and then you get advice from your accountant about becoming a limited company. It's normally once you're earning a certain amount that they advise you to become a limited company, but I wouldn't get too stressed about that at this stage.
Yeah.
Emma, the delegate has said yes, that's what they meant about
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. Any more questions before I move on?
And we got one here saying what is a good percentage to be offered. But I think we sort of covered that a little bit. You need to look at more information. You need to see what the practice is charging the patient. So I'd, even before going to interview, already work out what's the practice charging the patients per half an hour or hour appointment, and then work out what sort of percentage you think is going to be comfortable for an hourly rate.
Yeah.
For then.
There's too much to just say, is this a good percentage? Again, is it hygiene? Is it therapy? Is it nurse support? Are they plan? Is it direct access? Blah blah blah. There's so much. So I would say get all of that information and then ask the question.
And look on Indeed as well. Look at what all the practices are offering in terms of percentage, and then go onto their website and work out how much would that actually earn. Would I actually earn on that percentage? Just so you get a general idea of it as well.
Mm. Just going to carry on because I may
Yeah.
answer some of these questions as we go, but I will pause and stop again. So thank you very much for that. I'm just going to downsize. There we go. So IR35, again, I'm by no means an expert on this at all, but whispers of this started coming around in the last sort of, 5 to 7 years. And basically it was, it's a tax legislation designed to identify disguised employment. So that was the example that I gave. If you work in one practice, 9 to 5, 3 days a week, and that's your only practice, but you are paid as self-employed, technically you probably should be classed as employed. And this is where HMRC do, as they do investigate it, they do look at these things. I don't think it has a massive impact on you. It would more be the employer or the practice, because they would then have to make national insurance contributions and etc. and things like that. So yeah, so just to summarize this, it says, if you work as self-employed, but your working conditions resemble those as an employee, for example, fixed hours, if you can't substitute yourself from work, HMRC may classify you as inside IR35, meaning you must pay income tax and national insurance like an employee. And obviously your employer must contribute to some of that national insurance as well. Being outside IR35 means you're genuinely self-employed, responsible for your own taxes, and can benefit from business-related deductions as well. And that's where the option to substitute yourself, i.e. provide a locum when you're on leave, just strengthens that. Doesn't mean you have to, but it just strengthens that status. Here you can go on the HMRC website, gov.uk, and check employment status for tax. It's literally that. The link is at the bottom. Check employment status for tax. So if you just put IR35 CEST tool, it will come up and you can put it in there. Sometimes it does come back with I don't really know, which hasn't been useful. But again, I suppose things that you can discuss with the legal helpline if needed, and also your accountant. So some other key considerations then, do you decide how and when you work? So what days, what hours, that kind of thing. Again, it's a little bit tricky, isn't it? Because it's a practice. And so you need to work. You can't go, yeah, I'm going to work Saturdays and Sundays if they're not open. So, there is a degree of flexibility needed for that. Substitution, can you send someone else in your place? Yes, I can. Doesn't mean I have to, but yes, I can. And then is the practice obligated to give you work? Are you obligated to accept it? You could say, actually, no, I'm not going to work Friday afternoons anymore. Thank you very much. And ensure your contract reflects this self-employment status, just to avoid unexpected tax liabilities. So this is where contract is just so important to make sure you understand from the outset. Years ago, I personally didn't ever work with a contract. It was a bit of a handshake kind of agreement. Never really had any massive issues with that, but obviously, the world has changed massively since then, so it's not uncommon to have contracts now. Some people don't. I know some people that still don't, and that's fine. But I would just say you can protect yourself if you do. So what should a self-employment contract include? So we do have a sample one of these on the BSDHT member site as well. So the full names and addresses of both yourself and the dental practice or the practice owner that you are in contract with. The contract type must state clearly that you are self-employed and responsible for your own taxes and liabilities, and confirm the agreement does not establish employer-employee relationship. So the scope of work, define your duties. So what is it that you are providing? What treatments, what patient care, any additional services, and confirm that you have got clinical autonomy in that decision making as well. Working arrangements, so specify the days and hours that you will work, and that, or if work is on an ad hoc basis, to avoid IR35. And I say by ad hoc, it could be, like a set day, but you work at, one or more practices there. It can mention that you are responsible for arranging your own holiday or absence cover, but again, you don't have to. Fees and payments, so how will you be paid? Is it percentage? Is it hourly? Is it fixed? How will you invoice? What are your payment terms? Is it like within 2 weeks or 28 days of giving that invoice in? Again, that substitution clause allow the right to send a suitably qualified substitute if needed, which can strengthen that self-employment status. So insurance, confirm you hold your own indemnity, clarify that you're responsible for any claims arising from your work. And normally, actually, if you're employed, you would need this anyway. Equipment and materials, so specify who provides what instruments. You may bring your own instruments, but if you've got an airflow machine, again, that may belong to the practice, for example. If you do provide your own instruments, that again reinforces self-employment. Sometimes have a mixture of both. I know personally I've got my own set of instruments, but also I'll use some that the practice provides. What is your termination or notice period, and how either party can terminate that? What is the notice period of that? Confidentiality, data protection, GDPR, and then minimum pay guarantee. So if you've got gaps in the day book, any maternity or paternity arrangements. Some contracts are a bit off the shelf BDA contracts that talk about retainers, which again, I would just get legal advice on. I think that's more applicable to dental therapists than it is hygienists. When it says leave, annual leave, obviously, if you're self-employed, technically you can take as much as you like, but does it include in your contract how you will inform and roughly how many weeks approximately that you could expect to take in the year? And then does it include things like chairside support, decon support? What happens if they don't provide a nurse? Making sure that that's included in your contract as well, because many people have been there where you have the promise of nursing support, and after a few weeks that goes and it's like nothing's in your contract. So where do you stand with that? I'm just going to skip by any questions because I'm conscious of time, but we will come back. We will come back and answer any questions soon there. So BSDHT is a draft contract that you can download. You can have your own use there. We are developing our guidance sheets. Sharon's probably thinking, what's this? But yes, it's something I've been working on, Sharon, the guidance sheet on IR35 and then on employment and self-employment. So pretty much everything that we've talked about, but just in a bit more detail, for a guidance sheet that you can access anytime and download as a member. So we touched on this already. So sole trader versus limited company. The main difference then between a sole trader and limited company is how they're structured. So if you're a sole trader, you and your business are the same legal entity. You pay income tax and national insurance on your profits via self-assessment. You're liable for any business debts. It's quite easy to set up and manage. You've got less legal responsibilities. I would say if I can do this, anyone can. You've got full control over your business decisions, and it's best for those starting out or wanting minimal admin. So as Amy said before, most people would start off as a sole trader. As you build your hours and income, you then may want to consider being a limited company. And again, I think this has changed over the years that I think the amount you earn has increased quite a lot to make it beneficial for you to be a limited company. But again, I would get advice on this. And it means that the business is separate from you. Profits are subject to corporation tax, which is lower than income tax, and you pay yourself via salary and dividends on that. So you essentially are an employee of your company. Your personal assets are protected. You're only liable for what you invest. There is more admin, more paperwork, accounts, and that's where for this I would definitely have an accountant and legal advice. It may appear more professional to clients and lenders, and when I say lenders, things like mortgages as well. And it's best for those definitely on higher earnings if you want to be more efficient with your tax or you're seeking liability protection. So financial considerations when you're newly qualified or graduating, I would definitely 100% say have a budget. So understand your income, expenses and savings. After being a student for X amount of years, to finally have a wad of cash in your bank, you'd be like, hooray, I'll just want to go out and spend it. And, by all means do, but for a time, there will become a time where you'll need to seriously look at your funding and your budgets. I do think it's important to have an emergency fund aimed to 3 to 6 months of expenses. 6 months can be quite a lot when you're starting out, but 3 months has always been the general rule of thumb that I've been aware of. So to have 3 months worth of savings, just in case you need to be looking for a job. Sometimes notice periods are 3 months, and you could have a little bit of a wait there. Making sure that you understand your tax, what your student loan repayments are, and any pension contributions that you might have to make. So when you get your invoice paid, you obviously have to budget for tax and national insurance, but there's a lot of other things as well that you might not immediately think of. And again, pension, loan repayments, things like that could be one of them. Look at building your credit, manage your debt wisely, reviewing any employee benefits and salary deductions that you may have, depending on what employment you may be able to work with. And I say salary deductions as an example. If you work as a rep, for a dental company, sometimes you get company cars and things like that. So that would be classed as a benefit in kind. Probably not applicable right now. Maybe that's something later on. But then also set some short-term and long-term financial goals. I think really, honestly, just start as you mean to go on. It will make your life a whole lot easier. So looking into tax a bit more, just conscious of time again. So yeah, just to give you an overview of income tax thresholds. So in England, Wales and Northern Ireland, you've got a personal allowance. So you can earn £12,570 before you have to pay any tax. After that, you will be taxed at 20% on any income up to 37,700. It then goes to 40% from that figure to 125, and then you've got that additional rate on any income over 125. And I mean, gosh, it's in the news all the time now, isn't it? With cost of living and things like that. We can't seem to get away from it. But these income tax thresholds are frozen until 2028. It differs for Scotland. I'm not too sure what that is. So if you are based in Scotland, I do apologise, but it is worth just looking into and seeing how that differs there. And then there's something called pay on account, which is where you pay your tax in advance, and there's some important dates to be aware of with this. So payment on account is a system used by HMRC to collect income tax and national insurance in advance based on your previous year's tax bill. So you would make 2 payments. So 50% of last year's tax bill you would make in the January, and then you'd make another one in the July. So that by the time your tax bill comes out the following January, the aim is that that will have been paid in advance. So a lot of people can get caught out with this when you're newly self-employed, because you're having to pay for something that you haven't even earned yet. You may not have that money in place. So it's just, something to bear in mind. So it applies if you're self-employed, or if for any reason you've got some untaxed income. So if you have rental income from property or investments. It applies if your last tax bill was more than £1,000. So again, that's just potentially if you're self-employed, it will be more than £1,000. So when would you look to pay it? So you would pay if you were doing your tax return. So we've just had obviously we're in April now. I would file my tax return for the last tax year next January. So it does get a bit confusing when you look at the dates. I would also pay 50% of last year's tax bill to offset for next year, and then I would have another one to pay in July as well. And then you'd potentially have a balancing payment. So if you've got anything that's outstanding, you would need to top up. So I don't want to go into this too much and confuse you, but it's just to make you aware that potentially you do have that, that balance on payment to pay in advance. Can you reduce it? So yes, if you expect your income to be lower for next year, you can apply via your account on your HMRC online account. You can ring them and obviously have that discussion. Just be mindful, if you reduce it too much, you might face interest and penalties. An example could be if you know that you're reducing your working days from going down from 5 days to 3, or if potentially you're going on maternity leave and your income is going to be less, then that's a good example of how you can reduce that. You've then got national insurance contributions to think about. Again, I'm not going to go into this in too much because it's just lots of numbers, but again, just be mindful of this, because you will, if you're self-employed, potentially need to budget for this. As most of you have probably heard on the news, the recent changes have lowered the salary threshold for employer national insurance contributions. So, we were told in the budget that it wouldn't be raised, employees wouldn't be expected to pay more, but businesses are now expected to pay more. Therefore, it might have an impact on, people may not get a pay rise for a longer time, because, businesses are having to find this money from somewhere. Then you've got, so for self-employed, you've got class 2 national insurance contributions, which are £3.45 a week if profits exceed 6,725. You've got class 4 national insurance contributions. Again, you've got that profit bracket there. And then you pay 2% on profits above 50,000. I would just doubly check these as well, because these should be recent, but again, things change quite often with the way things are at the moment, especially with budgets and stuff. So just keep an eye on them. I would say for personalized advice, definitely, consult an accountant, a tax professional, or the HMRC website. They've got quite a few YouTube videos that can explain some of these things as well. You can get a lot of information on a government gateway account. Even if you're employed, you don't need to just have one of these if you're self-employed. It's really useful. I recently went through this with my mother-in-law, who's due to get a pension this year. She'd never been on this before in her life, and she was able to go back and see all of her national insurance contributions and any gaps in that way back to the 70s. And it gives you, your predicted tax. It tells you how much you've paid. So it can be quite useful to be familiar with this, even if you are employed. Yeah, you can just, I don't think it says on there, does it? Oh, there we go, registering. But yeah, sorry, you don't need to be self-employed to do this. I think you can literally just go on, put government gateway, it sends you a password and everything. It can be done there and then. It's really easy to set up. For self-employed, it may just take a little bit longer. So check if you need to register. So if you're employed and you've maybe done a little bit of locum work, you may not have to register as self-employed if you've earned less than £1,000. But if it's over £1,000 from self-employment within that tax year, then yes, you must register. So choose your structure. As we've said, most people would start as a sole trader. You can register for self-assessment from online through the HMRC. Create that government gateway, which is exactly the same as the previous slide, what I was saying. And then HMRC will send your UTR number, which is your unique taxpayer reference. And this is what you will need for everything. Make sure that you know your responsibilities. It won't cut it if you say, I forgot, I wasn't sure, I didn't know. It doesn't matter. You know, you could potentially get a fine of up to £1,000 if you file your tax return late. So make sure that you know your key dates and what your responsibilities are. And make sure to register for self-employment by the 5th of October after the end of the tax year you started self-employment to avoid any penalties. I would say if you're not sure at all, just go on the HMRC website or give them a call. When you can get through, they've been really quite useful in my experience. So as an example here, for the 2025 tax year that we're in, that will end April next year. You would then need to register as self-employed by October 2026. If you're doing a paper return, you need to do that by October. And if it's online, you've got until January. And then you've got any tax paid, it needs to be done by that 31st of January as well. I normally, after April has passed and you get your P60, if it's applicable, I normally do a little bit at a time every month so that when it's a mad dash scramble after Christmas to get your tax return done, you'll thank your earlier self for being organised and doing it. And also the phone lines are always really jammed as well at that time. So start early if you can. Not massively applicable at the moment, but from April 2027, depending on how much you earn, the HMRC are making tax digital, so you won't have the option for a paper return. But yeah, I've done both. I find both straightforward. I just do it online now. Okay, good time to stop for any questions and catch my breath and get a drink. We'll try and get through as many of these as possible, but if we don't, we'll put all these down and we'll make these questions and answers available to you.
Fab, Emma, you're doing a great job with this. It's quite a confusing subject for everyone. So, you know, I think everyone don't get too overwhelmed by it. I definitely think you just gotta, you know, becoming self-employed. I remember I don't know how old, so I was 14 years ago now when I became self-employed. And it's a lot to take in. I would definitely say, you know, seek advice from other people at your practice that you work with, and yeah, get an accountant. So you don't have to get one straight away. Someone's asked that question: do I have to get an accountant straight away? You know, I think if within the first probably few months, I'd probably start trying to find one, and just start keeping track of what you're being paid and what your expenses are. So some other questions we've got here are for let's have a little look. Sorry, just lost what I was going to say. How much do we set aside each month if we are self-employed for tax?
I'll come on to that.
Yeah, can you answer that?
Yep, I'll come on to that. That's coming up.
Okay, you're going to come on to that. Perfect. So another question that we've got here, I'm just looking for the questions about stuff are relevant now. If you are, yes, so somebody says, if you are self-employed and employed, would you still recommend an accountant? Yes. So if you are both, then you're still going to obviously be self-employed. So I would get an accountant. They're great for just as I think, like I had one for the first sort of 10 years. Some people could do it on their own, but I didn't have anybody else, family members, to ask about it. So I do think get an accountant if you are self-employed and you're starting out.
Karen, can I just ask what do you do?
Yeah, I was just gonna say it earlier. So from the start, I done it myself. I've never
Okay.
done it before, and I truly just follow what the HMRC website says. I actually call them, and they are very useful. They sit with you, they go through any question you have. For me, to this date, every day when I am about to file my tax return, I call them, I check my numbers, I'll double check, I have submitted this, is this correct? I got a car for last year and I thought, what can I apply? Why can I not apply? They are very useful. So I would say from my experience, if you want to go for it, go for it. It's very straightforward. The help is there. And so if I didn't have problems, I don't think you would either. I know
Mm.
the accountants can be very expensive because I did look into that as well. And I just thought that was a lot of money.
Mm.
And so, yeah, I would say if you are brave, I would say you can do it definitely.
Mm. Or you've got the option of having an accountant maybe for the first year to give you a bit of support and then go, thanks, I know what I'm doing now. Even you can have some like consultations, like free consultations that they can go through things with you and you're not obliged to go with them as well. I did that and I thought actually, for the amount that they wanted, for the amount that I was earning, I just chose not to and like Karen, did it myself. But it really just comes down to personal preference and confidence with your numbers.
Earlier, I think someone asked if there is an accountant for dental.
Hmm.
Here at the Southern Regional Group, we had actually an accountant which is really focused on dental, is TNT. I think Sharon can forward that information if I pass it on to Sharon. It was very, very useful and they focus on dental. So there are some people helping with
And
that.
was that as someone that came in to support your regional group?
That's right.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it
His
was.
accountant is called TNT, is Mr. Hussain. Yeah.
Mm. And again, I think this is where regional groups and attending these things are really, really useful. Um, because otherwise,
Otherwise,
where would you
yeah.
find this information?
That's right.
Any other questions? I'm sure we've got quite a few.
If Emma, there's a couple of people asked about whether they should use practice contract or BSDHT contract, and obviously I'm always going to advocate use the BSDHT self-employed contract because it was drawn up by Buxton Coates, who are our legal helpline. So where possible, we do suggest people use that contract because it's been designed by lawyers for dental hygienists and dental therapists, and it is to protect you.
Mm,
So yeah, so it's available as a member resource. But there again, if you do want to use a practice contract, then Buxton and Coates can also review it for you to make sure that you're not at disadvantage signing it.
mm. Yeah, and I always liken it to, if you're hiring someone to come and do work on your house, like a plumber, a builder, or something like that, you know, they would give you a contract. They're the self-employment.
Yeah.
Why would you tell them this is how often you can come to my house, these are the hours that you're going to work, and this is how much I'm going to pay you? It just would not wash. It sounds bonkers, but this is what
No.
happens, isn't it, in
Yeah.
dentistry? So, I think that's important to just to clarify. Okay, I'll plow on through and hopefully we'll have some time for questions at the end there as well. Um, Okay, so tax deductible expenses. So professional expenses, and again, this is where an accountant can advise you, but there's loads of information on HMRC. And if you ask around and maybe just get somebody to help mentor you through this as well, this can be useful. So indemnity, insurance, your GDC registration, any CPD courses and training. Also, you can offset this if you are employed as well. You can go on to that government gateway account and make that adjustment. So I'm employed now. I don't have any form of self-employment, but that's adjusted. So my GDC registration, my tax is offset against that because it is a requirement for you to have for your job to practice. Like, if you didn't need it, then obviously I wouldn't need GDC registration, just for the fun of it. I need it if I'm going to practice. So membership fees, BSDHT, BADT, again, I might just need to double check this, but I'm sure when I was employed, that again, this was the case at the moment that I could offset those. Sharon, do you know anything about that? I think there's HMRC has a list of things, and I'm sure
There's-
BSDHT is on that list.
we are on that list. We are.
Yep. So even if you're employed, you can
Yep.
offset your tax on
Yep.
this. So again, membership fees, this is why I say it pays to be a member because you're paying it in tax anyway. So, you may as well get something from it. So work-related equipment, so your instruments, your uniform, scrubs, PPE. Hopefully, the practice would provide that PPE, but again, that's negotiable if you've got particular preference. Any cleaning and sterilization products, again, personal preference, but hopefully the practice would have that. Any business costs, so your accountant fees, you can offset that as well. Office supplies, so stationery, printing, business cards, marketing, etc. software, so accounting, scheduling tools. I think AI is becoming quite big now. So, things like note takers and yeah, ones that write your dental notes. So that potentially could be something. Travel and vehicle expenses, so mileage for business related travel. And so this is again, so you're not commuting to a regular place of work. It's not a regular place as in one practice every week. I think again, you would need to double check on this. I think you might not be able to claim for, say, the first practice you work at, but you can claim for others as well. So if you worked at 5 practices, you may only be able to claim for 4 of those because those are in addition, but just double check. I'm not 100% on that one. If you
I
use
believe, sorry, just to answer that, if you're working at multiple practices for travel expense, you can only claim if you travel between the 2 practices in one day.
mhm.
So you need to work in one in the morning, one in the afternoon, which you can do. I have done that in my career. That's the only time you can if it's working at practices.
Okay. Well, I know that certainly when I locumed, I claimed for different ones because I was locuming and all over the place. But yeah, again, double check on that because
I
there are some
think if
grey
it's like a
areas.
locum, it's a bit of a grey area, and so I think
Yeah,
you
there's a
can.
lot of grey areas, isn't there?
Yeah,
So it's
if
always
it's
a check.
this is why accountants can be helpful. But yeah,
Mm.
it's good.
So yeah, broadband and utilities. Again, if you work from home, obviously you're potentially not going to be working from home, but if you have an office where you do, your marketing, your accounting, stuff like that, phone expenses, you can potentially put up a portion of that on your tax. Um, this is just going through a check at the moment, just to see if we're able to offer this as a downloadable resource, which is it's almost like a draft income and expenses sheet, which is just really, really basic with key things on there that you can use and amend just to get you started. So we'll keep you posted on this one. If we can get this checked and all okayed, it will be on the member area. So just keep an eye out for that. Do I really need an accountant? So I think we've covered this. I would say if you've got multiple income streams or work at several practices, accountant can help you organise and optimise tax. If you don't feel confident with numbers or tax rules, sometimes it just paying someone can just save you the stress and make sure that it's done and it's done properly. If you want to maximize your earnings by claiming the right expenses, again, sometimes I've fallen foul of this before, but what you can do is you can add it to the next tax year if there was something from the previous tax year. You can backdate it for maybe 1 or 2 years, I'm not sure. But again, if you've missed something off one tax year, you can potentially go back and do that. And if they're quite straightforward, you've got software that you can use here. QuickBooks is a common one. But again, you've got that peace of mind and accuracy with an accountant. So the choice is yours. Yeah, pretty much what I've said there. I'm not going to go into this too much. Benefits of having an accountant, and I'm really not pushing an accountant because I don't have one, but it's just something to be mindful and consider. So income protection then for self-employment. So income protection, it's if, for example, you are not able to work for certain reasons, an example, an illness, a sickness, accident, injury, something like that, then income protection after a set amount of time potentially can kick in. It can provide a monthly payment if you're not able to work. It covers expenses like rent, bills, and your daily living costs. Again, peace of mind by ensuring that you'll have that continuity. You can get flexible policies that can be tailored to your needs. And then also you've got that long-term stability. So it protects against unexpected financial hardships. I know of people that have broken their wrist and they've not been able to work for 8 weeks or so. Or generally, sickness, illness is or injury is the main one. But those are some of the benefits. Again, you don't have to have this. I've never had this. I thought if I'm unable to work, I'll just take the hit. I've got savings. But that's my personal preference. Not everybody, wants to do that, and that's absolutely fine. I'd really like to ask Amy and Karen if you've got income protection and pensions, but I'll go through this, but I'd really like to hear what you both do as well. So pension, so starting a pension as a self-employed individual is probably one of the best ways that you can look at your long-term financial security. I say that now when pensions have just taken a dive because Donald Trump's playing God over in America. So definitely get legal advice on this and make sure you know exactly what's what with pensions. find a plan that works for you with your financial situation and goals, and obviously looking at flexibility if you want to change. I personally have got a pension that I can contribute into, but I've also got some employment, some pensions from employment as well. There's a variety, but have a look into this sooner rather than later when you qualify. So why start a pension? This is mainly for self-employment. So if you are self-employed, you will not get a workplace pension. It would just be the state pension that you would be entitled to. There's no guarantee that we will have that when we reach that age. You're probably a lot younger than me, but certainly I'm 42 and already the age has gone up, I think twice in the time, that I've been in employment. It's now 67, I think. Is it going up to 68? I'm not sure. Used to be 60, then it was 65. So again, and it may get phased out. So be mindful of this. I'm not a pension whiz. There's just a few, when I was doing some research into this, some different types of pensions. Again, it depends on your age as well. So if you're under 40, you might be able to get a lifetime ISA. Have a look into this. Everyone's financial situation will be very different. So do what works for you. So how much to save for a pension? Obviously start with what you can afford, but aim for 12 to 15% of your income. When it says investment risk, choose funds based on your comfort level. So you've got different types of investments. Some can be high risk, some can be quite low risk, or some are mid to medium. So, have that conversation. Look for low fees, good investments. Something to look at as well is what fees exist when you draw on that pension or if you want to switch, because it's something that you may not think of when you start it, but years down the line, are you going to be charged a big hefty whack for moving that or drawing on that pension? Definitely start now, even like £50 a month, any £20 a month, everything, just small contributions can build up if they're invested in the right place. My mum drilled this into me. I've been saving since I was 18, and I'm really, really glad now that I have, because I'm not so concerned about the future, even though no one knows what's happening. But I'm really glad that my mum did make me put savings away, and it's been great because things like COVID happened, and thankfully I was okay. We was able to manage. It was tough, but I had those savings to fall back on. I did just want to point out, and Sharon, feel free to jump in. It is a member only webinar tomorrow that deals with this in lots more detail. And this will be the person, not me, Emma Slade Jones. This person, Emma Jones, will definitely be the person to speak to and ask questions on that. So don't think that retirement is for old people. Retirement is something that we need to start planning for now. So
yeah, that's tomorrow.
Tomorrow, yeah. Is registration open for that still, Sharon?
It's still open. Yeah, we're it's at 7 o'clock tomorrow night.
Perfect. Gosh, you don't stop, do you? Brilliant, thank you. So indemnity, you need indemnity, whether you're employed or self-employed, and this is really if there's a patient complaint against you. So things to bear in mind with your quote for indemnity, it differs with regards to if you're employed or self-employed, if you do direct access, if you do part-time, full-time, what your scope of practice is. Do you do whitening? Do you do therapy? Are you using your full scope of practice? It really, really varies. All Med Pro are who BSDHT partner up with, and there's more information on the BSDHT website. Obviously, there are other indemnity providers, so do shop around and get the best deal for you. But there is on the BSDHT website, if you just put in BSDHT indemnity, there's got a lot of frequently asked questions there. So that's a really useful place to start. Also wanted to touch on mortgage considerations for self-employed, just because if you are self-employed, it can take you that little bit longer to be accepted for a mortgage, mainly because lenders prefer you to have a stable income history and you've not got that guaranteed income as you have with employment. So again, lenders prefer 2 to 3 years of consistent earnings, so 2 to 3 years potentially of tax returns. If you're self-employed, you may need a larger deposit. As with anything, you need a good credit score, strong credit history, looking at your affordability, managing debt and expenses. So what can you afford realistically? They may lend you loads, but do you really want to be paying that amount every month? With a big mortgage, is it better to take a smaller one? And again, using a mortgage broker can help find the best lenders for self-employed individuals. And Sharon, do we have that with BSDHT? I know we've had webinars on it in the past, haven't we?
No,
With them.
no, we don't. And I was just typing in the chat that the same people that are doing the webinar tomorrow were the ones that did the mortgage webinar back in January, which I do
Right.
have a copy of the recording. If anybody missed it, that I could send to people. But no, we don't have an arrangement with a particular mortgage broker. This was more general information about, you know, mortgages for dental hygienists and dental therapists. But I do have that recording. If anybody wants a copy of it, they can just email me or put it in the chat and I'll send it to them.
Brilliant. Thanks for that, Sharon. So yeah, again, just something to consider, are you looking to get a mortgage? Do you already have a mortgage? How is being employed or self-employed going to impact on that? So just things to bear in mind. And yeah, I've just put you work hard for your money. So make your money work hard for you. Make sure there's a lot of information and I appreciate it can be quite overwhelming with this, but take a deep breath, make a list, sit and go through it. And, like I said, if you start off, small and well-meaning, when you can, putting your money away, then I absolutely, would advise that you do that. So a question that we had in advance was, I've heard of self-employment to try and put away a third for tax and national insurance. Should any money be put away in case of holidays, sickness, unexpected days off due to no nurse, equipment failure, etc.? If so, how much? So I did a little bit of research on this today, and this was based on HMRC guidance, tax national insurance bans, and information from Money Helper, which is a government-backed website, which Money Saving Expert, as we've all heard of, and Fidelity, and inspired by budgeting frameworks like the 50-30-20 rule. So what do you need, what do you want, and what your savings are. So taking all those things into account, this is roughly what it came up with. So a suggested percentage. And again, this is roughly, you don't need to definitely take this, as gospel. You look at your expenses and what works out for you. For example, someone's living expenses, if you're in the southeast in London, your living expenses potentially are going to be a lot higher, than someone in the north. It's just the way it is. Also, you might want a bit more enjoyment down there because let's face it, there's more to do. I'm in Brecon, there's nothing. So yeah, you may spend more on social and things like that. But again, this is just a rough guide. It's really difficult to say until you know how much you're going to be earning. Obviously, if you're self-employed, it's useful to have the first year of that tax return, so you've got a bit of something to base it on. But as a general rule of thumb, you can have separate bank accounts for these as well, so where you can just whack something away. I'm not going to go into government bonds, but I know that some people invest their tax money into bonds, until they need it, so it can be working for them. That could be something to consider. And then you could just have like a current account, which your spending money goes into as well. So be mindful of where which account it all goes into. It's easier to keep track of as well if you've got a separate account that you just literally, put away for tax and insurance. I did just want to touch on this for maternity leave as well, because I think it's really, really important that we consider this, because 94% of hygienists and therapists are female, that are registered with the GDC are female. When I looked into this, over half of these people are of childbearing age. And so if you're self-employed, you're not entitled to paid leave or statutory maternity pay. But if you've paid enough Class 2 national insurance contributions for at least 13 of the 66 weeks before your baby's due date, you can get a full rate of £187.18 per week. So it works out to be roughly around about £800 a month for 9 months of that maternity allowance that you can get. So again, this is just something to think of. Is it in your life plan that you may want to, have children, to start a family? If so, how are you going to budget for that? If you want more time off, are you going to potentially work more days? Maybe do some more locum work, save more so you can afford to take more time off. It varies, but I just think as a largely female female audience of registrants here that we have, we definitely need to be talking about this and being aware of this. I see it a lot on the social media site saying, I'm having a baby, I've got to go back after 4 weeks. I'd really like longer. Some are 4 months. Other people are like, yeah, I've taken a year. I can take the hit financially. Everything's individual. do what works for you, but do think about this now when you are planning your finances, because a year off work, 6 months off work, even a month, it's a lot financially. So do have a think about that. I'll skip past any questions just because I'm near the end now. So as I say, this webinar was open to non-members, and hopefully we have showcased some of the real benefits of being a member of BSDHT. It's free whilst you are a student, and it's £66 a year for newly qualified. As I said in webinar 1, £5.50 a month. It's like a one meal deal a month that it works out to be. And you get all of those things listed there. So legal helpline, legal fees, contract checking service, information sheets, support, CPD, regional events, newsletters, member-only content, 6 sessions of coaching and mentoring, which is what I'm involved in, and Karen and Sakina. Free webinars such as this, job adverts, indemnity, lots and lots and lots. So if you're not a member, I would strongly advise that you are. There's no reason to not be, particularly as a student or newly qualified. If you are unsure or are overwhelmed or find anything daunting with regards to any of this, BSDHT, we do have a coaching and mentoring program where you can have up to 6 sessions to support you. It doesn't necessarily need to be just now whilst you're a student. This is throughout your whole career cycle, from student to retirement. It doesn't necessarily need to be on, employment or self-employment. It can be on, anything that coaching and mentoring can lend itself to. So if you go to the website and just look at BSDHT coaching or BSDHT mentoring, there's a lot more information on that website. Again, if you look at a coaching session in isolation, you're looking at a minimum of £60 an hour, and you get 6 sessions as part of your membership. So, I'd even go as far to, I think coaching sessions are normally £80 to £120 an hour. So it's, really, really, you get a good return on your investment, particularly if you're not paying anything for your membership. So worth thinking about. There's a QR code there if you would like to scan for more information and to join. Again, the information's on the website. You can go straight onto the website and join from there. Or if you do have any issues, you can just email inquiries at bsdht.org.uk, and they can signpost you and support you in sorting your membership out. Summary of things to consider then. So from both webinars that we've done, making sure that you've got a good, strong CV, optional LinkedIn profile that we talked about. You don't have to, but definitely a CV, a cover letter, your documents ready for GDC registration, proof of your vaccinations, a list of interview-based questions with scenario-based examples, references. You don't need to provide them straight away, but an idea of who you might like to ask for that. Enhanced DBS, disclosure and barring service, which we touched on in webinar 1. Indemnity, smart outfit for interviews. Once you make a start, obviously in work, you'll need your clinical scrubs, your employment or self-employment contract, instruments potentially. Start having to think about any financial considerations, how you are going to budget for that. Do you need income protection? What pension contributions, if at all, if you need them? So a few things just to start considering from this 2-part webinar that we've put on. I'd also want to put it here is what else out of anything that we've touched on, is there anything that you would like more information on? Like I said, we are not subject matter experts in this, but we can find people who are, if there's things that you want to have a bit more of a deep dive in. So pop it in the chat, let us know. We can always have those discussions. Or sometimes, they've already happened and there might be a recording that can be signposted to. So please let us know if there's anything that you would like any more information on. And lastly, I really just wanted to finish with this because it's not all about the money. I think you are unique of when you qualify, what you will bring to the dental profession. Your voice absolutely matters within the team. Speak it with assertiveness and professionalism. You need to really advocate for yourself, particularly if you're self-employed. There are practices out there that will take advantage, that will promise everything and deliver nothing. So, value yourself, your well-being, and your professional needs. Do not be afraid to ask for support. if it's nurse support in clinic, if it's mentorship or someone, you know, just a listening ear, you do not have to do this alone. It's a lot, particularly when you're starting out, but people are there to help. You deserve to feel backed and supported. I would say choose a role that aligns with your values, not just the pay. The pay isn't everything. Obviously, some people, you just want to go, I need a job. Any job will do at the moment, and that's fine, you know, just to have something, but keep looking. If something doesn't suit, do not settle for less. Yes, of course, we need to pay the bills, but you know, if it's going to have an effect on your mental health, then if it doesn't feel right, trust your instinct and walk away if it doesn't support your worth or your well-being. You know, we have supported quite a few people in the coaching and mentoring program that have become in that situation. So I will say there is power in choosing environments where you can thrive, not just survive. You know, it's not just about going in, doing your job and going again. You know, work somewhere that values you and know your own value and don't lose sight of that as well. And as I say, hold on to your values as you start on this path in your dental careers. I know some of you may be dental nurses prior to this as well, but as you qualify, keep learning, keep curious. Don't forget why you started. You know, we get into this profession to help others, to be of service to others, and to help others live happier and healthy lives as well. But make sure that we are living happier, healthy lives ourselves. Put yourself first. You know, do not bust a gut and compromise your health and your well-being, and your mental health and burnout for any job. It's very, very easy for it to happen in this climate. So be mindful of that. Get support. That's it. Any questions? I think I can.
Lots,
Yes, I'll stop
lots of
sharing
questions.
now. That's
Lots
me
of
all done.
questions.
So we'll plow through as many of these as possible. We've got about 20 minutes. So yes, on we go.
If I do the first one then, Emma, so with regards to the webinar tomorrow, yes, that's going to be recorded. So if people haven't registered, please register for it because I can send it out to those that can't attend, but I need your contact details in order to be able to send that to you. In the background, I have been trying to access Zoom in the back end to send the mortgage webinar, and unfortunately, it looks like Zoom's got a bit of an issue accessing some files. So please email me, sharon@bsdht.org.uk, just in case we lose any names in the chat, and I will send those. If not later, it'll be tomorrow when hopefully Zoom is playing nicely.
Fab, thank you. And I need reminding again, it's like 8 o'clock and I've had a full day of work. What was it that I asked? I said, Karen and Amy, I'd love your input on how you manage that. What was it?
So that was on income protection.
Yes, yes. Are you happy to share your approach to that?
Yeah, absolutely. And so for me, I personally don't have, and I do put aside some money. And so I try to rely on that and do my best. However, I have come across with some income protection organization like the Wesleyan Protection. They actually do a specific income protection for dental hygiene and therapists. And I believe you can find them, online, but they are quite good when I discuss with them because I have had a consultation to see whether will that be suitable for me now or perhaps in the future. But because I'm still quite happy with what I'm doing, but for those who wants to have, there is available on the. During our Southern Regional Group study days, we also have Garrett Fletcher, and they know a lot about dental stuff. And so they do provide that on top of other services like mortgage and really advice for us.
Hmm.
So I know that is available. Yeah,
Perfect. And did you say that was Wesleyan that do a
that's right. Yeah,
particular one? Fab.
yeah.
Thanks, Karen. Amy, how about you?
So I think it's sort of circumstantial really. So when I was starting out in my career and I was buying a apartment on my own and renovating it, only had my own income coming in, then it was a time when I really needed it,
Hmm.
income protection. I was also trying to build up sort of like a safety net. I'm now at a different stage in my career where I've recently come back after maternity leave and I'm working part-time, and I have a safety net behind me, and I didn't feel that I needed income protection at the moment. So it
Mm,
does depend on where you are in your career, really.
yeah.
And like Karen said, have you got a safety net as well? If you haven't, then it's something definitely to recommend.
Mm. Yeah, so you don't need to have that, do you? The only thing definite is indemnity. That is the only thing you
Yeah.
definitely need to have. Everything else, well, indemnity, tax, and national insurance. Everything else is optional. So
And you can get a lot of free advice on income protection and pensions and things like that, and you can talk about your own circumstances.
definitely, definitely. No, thank you for sharing that.
Perfect.
So what questions have we got
Should we have a
then?
look? So we've got a few about different rates of pay again. So it's going back a little bit to the earlier part of the webinar. So one here is there a difference between plan patients and direct access money wise? Don't know if you want to answer that one, Emma.
Karen, do you see direct access, and what's that? I'm sorry, I'm sloping here because I'm not actually working in clinic anymore. So yeah, I think Karen's the best person to answer that.
Absolutely right. Thank you. Yeah, I'm happy to help with that. So I do have the direct access and I do work on the NHS. I basically do a little bit of everything. And for me, it doesn't change whether it's direct access or NHS. Well, NHS, when it comes to private, is considered as private. And so it doesn't make any difference to what I get paid.
Hmm.
The only difference I have is when it comes to UDAs, but that's a contract and a target I have. But for me, and generally my understanding, direct access in private patients is the earning. Obviously, you have to liaise with your employer and see what the agreement is. But generally speaking, doesn't make any difference. You earn the same.
I
Yeah.
think as long it's only if you're really on a percentage, it'll make a difference though, is one thing to bear in mind. So generally, in practices, direct access patients pay more. It's not all practices. I always see that it's a bonus that they pay more because they kind of understand more, that it is a different sort of service that you're offering, and you'll need to get consent forms, but whole nother webinar to go into to talk about that.
Yeah.
So you can get paid more if they're direct access, and you can get paid less if they're plan. So that is one thing to look at when you're negotiating pay. So if you're negotiating a percentage, also, and they offer plan patients, ask how much are you going to get for plan patients, because you're likely to get less for plan patients than you do for your fee paying patients on a percentage. So that is something you need to consider.
Hmm.
Can I just jump onto that?
Yeah, of
Again, I
course.
think, thank you, Amy. So again, for me, I think it's about negotiation because for me, I do work on percentage and it doesn't make a difference as long as
Yeah.
I am happy with what we have agreed. So it really comes down to what you negotiate, your skills and, your comfort zone, really. If you're able to provide a service and deliver, then you're probably able to decide, I want to be paid as percentage, and this is what I want because this is what I provide.
Hmm.
Yeah.
That's good to know. That brings us on to another question, actually. So Karen might be the best person to answer this one. I've been offered a job, which this is the question. I've been offered a job which has my amount per UDA. Of course, we don't have UDAs ourselves. Should I be concerned about this? So I'm definitely going to pass that question over to Karen.
Yeah, I'm looking at Karen as well.
Absolutely, no problem. So I do work per UDA and I am given a target as a therapist and I have agreed a target and the amount per UDA. Now it depends. It works exactly like the same like for dentists. It depends on the area you're working with and obviously the type of UDAs you take. I was offered 15, between 12 to 15, and we had an agreement. But that is because of the area I work, because the treatment I provide, and because I am capable to do that demand. And so, as a newly qualified starting therapist, I wouldn't recommend it because it's highly demanding. But if you feel confident, by all means, I just took this job last year. And yes, you can get pay per UDA, but again, it comes down to the area you work in.
So are you saying that that's something to negotiate with the practice?
Definitely, definitely negotiable.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Okay, another question we have, not do you generally need to pay less tax or national insurance contributions when self-employed? It's a bit of a tricky one to answer, isn't it?
I think it depends what status you are, if you're a sole trader or limited company. I think you can offset tax with a limited company. Certainly when I've been employed and self-employed, I've still had to pay tax, you know, if it's 20%, 40%, depending on how much I've earned, it's amalgamated together. This is from employment, this is from self-employment. Overall, this is how much tax I owe. So I'm not taxed more on a second job or anything else on a second job. But I think it comes down to your self-employment status on that and where you can offset some of the tax. So as an example, like I cannot, as an employee, I cannot offset training courses, CPD or anything like that. So that's why potentially you can offset more if you're self-employed, therefore earn more. Not necessarily earn more, but you know, it goes on courses and fees, so you can almost like offset that. I hope that makes sense. I don't know if Karen or Amy, if you want to add anything to that one.
Yeah, I think you're right. You can put your expenses through as self-employed, which you can't necessarily do as employed. But then there's the extra benefits of employed being you get things like your maternity pay, you may get some sick pay, you get pension contributions and things like that. So it is weighing up really in what's offered.
Yeah.
So you've got to kind of look at all factors really.
Mm.
So brilliant. So just having a little look for any other questions we've got. Some of them could be totally a whole new webinar that we could go on for hours talking about. Sharon, did you have any other questions?
There's one, but I'm not sure whether, I think maybe more for a comment. Do you think that the NHS will be able to provide all the benefits that they offer dentists that dentists start to offer for therapists who are working for them? I think that's basically, I think pension, etc., all the same benefits.
Yeah, so this is a little bit, again, this is a grey area at the moment, isn't it? And I know that this is why some people, again, Karen, you might be better place to answer this one. Some people didn't want to work with UDAs because the practice has a contract with the NHS. They're not employed by the NHS. You don't work for the NHS. They just have an NHS contract. But as part of that NHS contract, some dentists are entitled to things like pension and things like that. That doesn't seem to have been passed on to self-employed hygienists and or therapists. So people are quite rightly saying, well, if we don't get the same benefits, I'm not doing it. Others have said, no, I'm quite happy, you know, to do this scope. So yeah, again, that comes down to individual negotiation. Karen, what would you say on that?
My understanding on receiving the benefits is quite great. Like you say, apparently is on talks, but I do not believe that is going to happen for us. And
It
obviously
should do, in my opinion, it absolutely should do, but
yeah, that's what
Yeah.
we hope. But at the moment, I don't see it. And like you say, for me, the benefit is that I can use my full scope. I love it. I
Yeah.
practice on it. I am happy with my payment. And so that is my main goal. And so if it works for the girls, I think, I mean, personally, you decide if that is worth it for you or not.
For you.
For me, the benefits are not important.
mhm.
Yeah.
Someone's followed that way. So do therapists not get an NHS contract or the benefits of an NHS pension? So I don't know if you want to answer that, Emma, but I think it truly is sort of down to a lot of NHS practice jobs are self-employed. If you get an NHS job that's more community-based or hospital-based, they tend to be more employed, where you are going to get some benefits of a pension. But if it's self-employed, you're not going to get those employed benefits.
Yeah, I think if the job is advertised on the NHS website, NHS jobs, it will be an employed position. If it's a practice that's advertising with NHS patients, they will have the NHS contract and it's not an NHS employed position. Therefore, you would not get the benefits of that. Karen, how does the contract work with UDAs? Do you have the practice has the practice has the contract with the NHS, and have you got your own, is it the PIN number system?
So for us therapists and the way that I know it works, which is how I'm working, the practice have got the contract with the NHS. And separately, I negotiate what would be my target and what would be the UDA payment. I do not have a PIN. Therapists do not have PINs. Instead, we have an FP70 form, which actually comes with two sections. One for the section of the contract, in which the number and the PIN of the actual contract with the NHS goes. And the next section is my name and my GDC number. So every time I provide a service under the NHS, I fill up one AP17 with all the details, and that is how they track how many UDAs I have done every month.
Perfect, because this is quite new in the grand scheme of things, isn't it? It's only a year or 2 years, 18 months since this has come out. It is, still relatively new. It's not something that I've worked with, so great that you are here to answer this, Karen.
Definitely.
Yeah. Okay, any other
Okay.
questions? We've got around about 5 minutes left.
We've got one here. So it says, if I was employed in one practice, then self-employed in another practice,
Mhm.
how would I work out the tax, and would it put me on a different tax code where I pay more tax?
Um, from my personal experience, no, you wouldn't pay more tax, you would just pay the tax. So looking at the tax bands, anything that's like £12,500 or whatever that figure was is you can earn that without paying any tax. Anything above that is 20%. Then anything above in the next bracket is 40% and so on. So it would just be collective. So what you would do is on the government gateway, you would have your P60 from employment, you would put that in, you would then work out how much tax from self-employment you would owe. I suppose one of the benefits of that is you could potentially have an employer pension and have the benefits of employment to an extent, but then you've also got some of the benefits of self-employment where you can offset quite a lot of your CPD and training, so that's quite a nice
Mix,
position
isn't
to
it?
be in.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I quite
I've
like that.
certainly done that. I've done employed and self-employed, and at the time I was like, oh, because it was just another thing to fill out on the self-assessment tax return, but it was really straightforward. So no, you don't pay more tax. It just gets calculated. It all goes in the same pot, and obviously you're taxed at source when you're paid PAYE as an employee, but you would just have the rest of it to make up from self-employment.
If I could just sort of do a caveat before we finish as well, just to say that all the information we've provided here is a guide, and we're not financial experts, so we're not accountants, and we're not pension advisors, etc. So it is a guide. So you must do your own research.
Yeah.
You'll get your own financial information. Check HMRC. What the information we provide is a guide, and we're just providing it in hopefully in sort of easy to understand, bite-size information.
Yeah, no, that's really important. Thanks, Sharon, because our circumstances are very different. I've not worked clinically now for three and a bit years. So again, things can chop and change in that time as well. Certainly with UDAs and exemptions and things coming in, there's a lot of change. But
Yeah.
yeah, that's why it's really important, I think, to be a member of your society and be part of this change. These changes wouldn't happen, would they, without our societies either?
No, and that,
Um,
No.
and that's our legal helpline. Whilst they won't go into things like, oh, how much tax should I pay? They can certainly talk to you about what your current self-employment situation is. So, but they're not going to be able to tell you what your tax bill is going to be, but they'll be able to guide you in, are you truly self-employed, or are you a worker, or are you in an employed situation?
yeah. Okay, couple more minutes. Any last ones to finish on?
So we've got here, there was one about, are you going to explain what paperwork be needed to prove the combination of self-employed and employed? I think really the only paperwork you're going to need is your contracts. So your contracts are going to state, aren't they, if you're employed or self-employed? If there's anything else, Emma?
Just from a tax perspective, you'd need your P60 at the end of the financial year, which you get if you're an employee. And then from self-employment, you would just need your UTR, your unique taxpayer reference number. Both of all this is on the government gateway website. You've got a section on there that says self-employment, and you've got employment, you've got national insurance contributions. So it's all on that government gateway. Those are the main things. Obviously, you need all your expenses and everything like that as well. And yeah, just your contracts in place if HMRC do any investigating.
And I think
Obviously,
sorry, Emma, you carry on.
I
Sorry.
was I was just going to say, obviously, you need to keep. I think it's 7 years
It
that you
is,
need
yeah,
to keep
Yeah.
all of your
yeah.
receipts, invoices, and things like that. So yeah, because you may be audited on that as well. So,
and I think, hey, don't be afraid of HMRC, because actually they genuinely are very helpful, and they're not there to catch you out. They are there. You make their life easier if they can prime you and they can train you to provide the information that they need. So don't be scared of them. They're really, really helpful.
true. And I think it's also worth mentioning as well, if you've never registered or done anything with HMRC before, be very, very mindful of scam emails and things that say they're from
That's
Yeah,
true.
HMRC.
yeah,
Be very, very mindful of that, because it's when it says, oh, you're due some money back, just click on this link.
yeah. Don't.
Doubly check, be very, very mindful. I always tick the box where I always still get a paper copy. I'm a bit old school. I like a paper copy in the post. I keep them in my filing box. I know where I'm at with that. If you get any emails, maybe just give them a call or just doubly check, because there are a lot of
Yeah,
HMRC scams around. So just be aware of that.
that's really good advice, Emma. Yeah.
Really good.
Okay, dead on
We're
half
done.
past. Perfect. Well, thank you all so much for your time. If there are any questions we've not got round to asking, I know there were some from the first one as
Yeah,
well. I am starting to work through that. Sharon and I can discuss how those questions and answers can be
yeah,
shared with everybody. But yeah, if you have any questions, get in touch with us, inquiries, get in touch about membership, coaching and mentoring. We're on a Easter break at the moment, and we've got some training and things coming up. But I can advise you of the wait if you wanted a bit of coaching and mentoring support. Look at the webinars that we've got coming up, look at the resource section. When the time comes, get that contract checked, legal
yeah.
advice, all the above. But yeah, don't suffer, don't panic. We're
Just
here. It's manageable.
Yeah, just a quick one. Last question just come in about the exemptions. There is a standard operating procedure on our website, on our member portal, for working under exemptions that members have access to. So somebody says, can we get a webinar on working? There is actually a standing operating procedure on the webinar, on the website as well.
Perfect. Lovely. I'm off to get a cup of tea
Yes.
and decompress. Have a great Easter weekend, everybody. Thank you all so much. And yeah,
Take care.
hopefully speak to you soon.
Thanks ever so much.
Okay.
Bye,
Take care,
everybody.
everyone.
Bye,
Bye.
everybody.
Bye
Bye.
bye.
Thank
Bye bye.
you. Bye.